Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome once again in Agahi with your host Warisa Zainab, the only program on Hidayat TV that talks about your psychological well-being and mental health. Like always, we have an amazing guest with us who is doing some brilliant work around healing and empowering people. We have today with us Aaliyah joining all the way from Sydney, Australia. Aaliyah is a transformational empowerment expert who helps people heal and thrive and create the best version of themselves. Aaliyah, thank you so much for connecting once again.
Jazakallah khair and walaikum salam, dear Warisa. It's such an honor again and a blessing to be sitting with you today. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be on your show again, and thank you for having me.
I'm honored to have you, Aaliyah. And the topic that we're going to cover today, it's something that we are both really passionate about. And you'll be surprised how many people made contact, and I'm always like looking for feedback from our audience. And lots of people, they said they have been in, situations and relationships, either with a caregiver, parent, in-laws, or even a spouse who had traits of narcissism. And for any person who's been in a relationship with somebody who uses power, control, manipulation, it's really painful. And people find it extremely difficult and challenging to break away from such toxic, hurtful, spiteful relationships. And then one of the challenges people face, Alia, is surviving after leaving a narcissistic partner or a family member. And today I want to talk about how to thrive, how to heal after narcissistic abuse. So before we jump into the topic, Alia, I want you to tell our viewers the kind of work that you do and what kind of clients you work with, so that we get an idea of what you do behind the scenes.
So I have a various different types of clients, and a lot of them have to do with, building a relationship with themselves, one finding themselves in, abusive relationships and how to, pick up the pieces and rebuild their lives. These are often, what women are going through that I'm
Even men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So, as a transformational empowerment coach, there are several things that in terms of narcissistic abuse, there's several tools that I use in order to help my clients deal with the healing process. And just to name a few, which of course there is no one size fits all solution like to healing narcissistic abuse, but there are some tools that can help, that can be helpful for many women. So as a master's NLP coach, some of the tools that I utilize with clients are, for example, pattern interrupt. This is to change one's mind and perception on the situation. I can elaborate more further details later on, but I just want to mention a few more. So another is by changing your state. So this is to interrupt existing patterns that we use in relation to our physiology. Now, the other is scramble patterns. So this is about imagining the problem as a movie and having the influence over how we can change that. So, for example, visualization and also future pacing.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few things. Thinking pattern, for example, shifting perceptions, and the power of, like I would say, desensitizing certain emotions or experiences. And I'm sure you've seen this time and time again, that people who have lived or survived a narcissistic relationship where they have always been treated, or should I say mistreated, people lose their confidence. Their self-esteem becomes low. People have doubts about their own selves. I often hear from clients that I've lost myself in the process. I don't know what my identity is anymore because I spent my entire life trying to please someone who could never be pleased or satisfied or content. And we had this discussion earlier on that we know that a narcissist never changes because they don't want to change. So the person on the receiving end who is going through the verbal or psychological abuse and manipulation, they give in their 100, 200%, thinking that their love and attention is going to change this person, and this person never changes. And by
No.
the time they realize, sometimes it's a bit late. The damage is done.
Yes.
How do you help your clients, Aaliyah, in coming to that realization that what they have been suffering from all this time, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial, spiritual, this is first of all abuse. How do the clients come to this realization that this is unacceptable and this is not going to change?
Yeah. Well, number one, the most important thing is that the self-acknowledgement, by acknowledging the reality for what it has been and what it is. So sometimes, clients have they have difficulties trying to separate, their emotional attachment to the person, because obviously there has been love bombing, future faking, and there's been, a combination of cycle of gaslighting, abuse, psychological abuse amongst that process. So it's hard for the person to recognize that. Sometimes they're in a state of confusion. So it's really important that they actually just sit for a moment, get real with themselves, and sit in solitude to actually come down and to listen to their soul and actually accept that the person is actually abusive. So
Yeah.
acknowledgement is definitely one of the first key to actually taking that first, few steps to the healing process.
Because you do see that most of people who are in a relationship, whether it's a parent, it could be a sibling, even a work colleague or a friend, um,
Yeah.
most of the times people are in denial or they try to justify the behavior that, oh, this person is not that bad, it's just sometimes they are a bit strange or mean or they bully, but they didn't mean that. That justification becomes like a habit, and before
Yeah.
you know it, you
Yeah.
end up allowing more and more and more, and you reach a point where it just hits you hard, and you think, you know what, I can't take it anymore. I can't deal with the pain and the hurt. So when people do come to you, Aaliyah, and they say, okay, I've reached a point in my life where this person and the treatment that I'm receiving from this person is affecting my health, my life, my work. I can't focus on work or my studies, or my health is being affected. How do you help them go to the road of recovery? Because we both know you cannot heal in the same environment with the same person who has caused the wound or the pain.
Right. Well, see, this is, it's a tough situation to deal with a client who's had enough, but they still want to stay. So I'm going to speak on those who actually really want to completely cut off, being in a relationship with a narcissist, because at the end of the day, it's detrimental to your mind, body, and soul, and your psyche. And these people are never going to change. As they get older, they get worse.
Oh, yeah.
So, so to me, the best possible way to actually heal through from narcissistic abuse is to go no contact. When you go no contact with a narcissist, it's essential to also delete, block, and friend. Delete their numbers. Any type of social media connection that you may have with them. And also with their flying monkeys. Now, the flying monkeys is also known as the supporters. It's also important to actually cut, or remove yourself from being in contact with them. because again, when you don't actually do that, you're still kind of connected in some way, or they might repost something that will be triggering for yourself. So you really need to be mindful and take care of what may be triggering for you. So also the reason why it's important to go no contact, not just through communication but through social media, is that social media is a playground for a narcissist. They live their lives on social media like you're watching them.
Yeah.
So again, this is another way for them to try and control and trigger your emotions and have that control over you. By knowing that they're doing something to trigger you, it's giving them supply, it's making them happy, it's feeding their ego.
Mhm. I have
Yeah.
received a question from a sister, and she's saying, actually, I've got two questions for you. So, one question is, how can I go no contact when there are children involved and we live in the same house? And I know that breaking contact with this person means I may lose custody of my children. And I'll come to the next question. So the sister, she's asking that how can you go no contact if it's your parents, and breaking ties with the next of kin is not permissible in Islam.
So this is a very tricky situation, because often our first initial contact is really, first contact with narcissistic abuse is actually through our own family. So, we've learned how to, have these type of relationship with others, to be connected with them, because we've been told no matter how, toxic or disrespectful a parent is, it's important that you actually need to stay, connected and respect. And then, some, depending on what religion one may practice, they might throw in some religious verse in there to sort of, keep the victim, or the person that's experiencing narcissistic abuse to remain in contact, although they don't necessarily want to have as much. So it's definitely a tricky situation to be in. Now, let's talk about, first of all, being remaining in contact with narcissistic families or toxic families. It's important to just acknowledge and accept that it is what it is with them. But what you're choosing is what you're choosing is a totally different lifestyle, which is, healing and turning the unconscious ways of living and living, a more profound, thriving self. So going grey rock when something happens, so when they say something to cause you to be upset, or they're trying to trigger you, it's important to just observe, be still, acknowledge your feelings, but don't react.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things why it's important. It's so important, as we've spoken about. One of the topics on our interview is, the importance of connecting with your higher self, because in order for you to overcome, in order for you to rise above the situation, such as, dealing with narcissistic people or toxic people, is to really go above and beyond and understand that you don't have to emotionally react to the distress that they're causing you. So by limiting your contact with with your family, setting boundaries for yourself, meaning, you will spend so and so much time with them on a particular day. And then, just, if you have to be somewhere, if you've got, this is why it's important to have, goals and habits, good habits, hobbies in place, so that you do have, also the time, space, capabilities to go to that and entertain yourself through that, and, excuse yourself because you've got, goals to achieve, or, just sort of keep your time limited, from such environments. Yep.
Sorry, I was just thinking because you mentioned boundaries, and we see in relationships where one person is a narcissist and the other person is an empath or a codependent, they find it really difficult to set boundaries. Struggle with it. They can't say no. They can't say what they want or what they need, because their needs and wants become like secondary. The priority is the narcissist, pleasing the narcissist. Otherwise, you will suffer the consequences of the wrath. Now, we know narcissists don't really respect other people's boundaries or their rights and, their personal space. Say, for example, somebody is trying to set boundaries with this narcissistic parent or sibling or work colleague, but they still kind of mock and they don't respect that boundary. What do you do in that situation then?
Again, when a narcissist tries to cause distress, to a victim, they'll often do that, especially they'll come on more stronger, especially when an empath, decides they want to start practicing or implementing boundaries. So again, it's about, just observing that, their behavior and separating yourself from those emotions of what they're trying to, the emotional turmoil that they're trying to cause to you.
Yes.
And seeing that this narcissist, obviously, they, one of the things that I've noticed with narcissists is that they have adult tantrums. And again, that can be very distressing to see because it causes you to feel like you're at fault when, and the guilt trip and the shame that they try to inflict on you. So again, this is about making it about just observing this person, has an issue, they have unresolved, childhood traumas and unresolved behaviors that they have not come to deal with.
Yes.
So this just, they don't know how to, they don't want to also have to deal with themselves. They just want everybody to work around them.
It's like I remember someone asked me that, this person is like a bully. You know how in schools you have children who are bullies? They come like really up close and they make you feel intimidated and powerless. They huff and puff and, like you said, throw tantrums to get what they want. And if you dare say no, you suffer the consequences of that. So these are adults who act like 4-year-olds, that I want this and I want this now, and if I don't get it, then that's where the guilt trips come, the manipulation, the blaming, the verbal abuse. So it's very difficult. Like some people may try while they are living with a narcissistic person to set boundaries, to explain that this is hurtful behavior, this is spiteful behavior, and I will not tolerate or accept that. But because the other person has no respect for you, they have no empathy, no consideration, how can you find healing when you're hurting on a regular basis?
Yeah, so this is the thing. When one still decides and chooses to live with the narcissist, it's really important that they practice self-care on a day-to-day basis and to be really self-aware and self-in touch with them, with themselves and the emotions and, being aware that this person has, they're never going to change. And if they want to stay in this type of relationship, then they just need to do the work on themselves, because there's no point in trying to make things work with a narcissist. It's their way or the highway. And I've heard, I'm 99.9999%. I mean, with my own ears, I've heard this, 99.99%, I'm right. So you cannot work with somebody who doesn't see an issue with, with themselves. So if one has to live with, with a narcissist because of, children or financial difficulties, then it's really important to practice, self-care and to take care of themselves and to do things that they enjoy, not to feel guilty about doing those sort of things, because often, the narcissist will be complaining, putting you on guilt trip. They may even give you the silent treatment. Silent treatment is that they often do. They may also withhold sex as a punishment as well. Affection, exactly. And whilst they're not giving you affection, they may be over showering other people with attention, and they do this subtly. to hurt you and to cause harm psychologically. So again, this is why it's important to, have emotional maturity and emotional intelligence with dealing with the narcissist, because this is one of the ways that you can thrive and survive if you have to live with them.
You mentioned children. You know, you do see this in many cases where they will use their own children to get what they want, or they would make the children against the other spouse or partner, so
Mhm.
that the person has no choice but to stay in that abusive relationship just for the sake of children. And I get to hear this, Alia, all the time, that the
Yeah,
only reason I'm with this person is because of my children. And
yeah,
it's very difficult to make the client see the bigger picture, that the damage that's being caused to the children in this dysfunctional home environment where the parents are constantly fighting, arguing, or one parent is humiliating or shouting or belittling the other one. What kind of personalities are these kids gonna grow up with? Where
exactly.
where the mother is shouting or abusing the father, or the father is shouting, abusing, manipulating the mother.
Yeah.
What kind of children will they grow up as? What kind of adults would they grow up as? What kind of relationship behaviors are gonna learn?
You bring up such a good question, because this is such, you know, narcissists are not born. These are learned behavior from
Oh, thank
either,
you for mentioning that.
yeah, they're not born. It's either from one or, both parents who are toxic or have narcissistic traits. And so one of the questions that I ask my clients is, when they decide to stay for the children, I ask them, well, then what type of adults are you actually breeding into this world? And
Yeah,
not only, you've got to think about the whole bigger picture of how this actually works, because it's not just for your children. What you're actually teaching the child is that I'm not good enough. It's okay for me to stay in a toxic relationship,
mm,
because this is, it's like some kind of distorted reality of this is love, and this is what they grow up thinking and doing
yeah,
to their spouses. And then guess what? This is why we have generational trauma
trauma. Yes.
ongoing, because what that narcissistic child will grow up doing is becoming a narcissistic adult, and then marrying somebody who's innocent, or someone who was also, a narcissist. And then they have families, they have children, and then they just repeat the cycle, and it's ongoing. And
Yeah.
this is what I ask my clients: what are you doing? What do you think, how are you positively impacting the children, if you're raising them in a toxic environment or somebody who is narcissistic?
Mhm. Now, coming back to the question that one of the sisters asked, that she has a parent who's a narcissist, and it's very, very, very difficult for her to kind of go no contact. Would minimizing the contact help? Like you gave example that minimal the contact, the better, and not to react when
Mhm.
conflict arises. Now, one of the problems associated with this is that if one person is in a fit of rage and they are shouting or saying things deliberately, intentionally to hurt you or to get a reaction from you, and you go quiet, it makes them even more angry. That why are you not saying anything? I'm talking to you. I'm speaking to you. Are you not listening? So that puts the person on the receiving end, the victim or the survivor, on a very in a very difficult position where they're like, I don't want to react, but this person is not giving me the chance to just stay calm and not say anything or do anything. So as a response, they end up saying something or doing something that they later on kind of regret. Oh, I wish I hadn't given in, or I wish I had, stood up for myself. But in the moment, they feel helpless,
Yeah.
powerless, and
Mhm.
scared.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is, instilling fear.
Mm,
We need to And instilling fear is one of the tactics that narcissistic people utilize to keep their victims in control.
Yeah.
So obviously there's going to be rage, there's going to be condescending remarks, there's going to be, communications that will keep their victims at bay, and also in a fearful state. So number one, the victim needs to realize that the fear that the narcissist tries to implicate is not real. It's just fear that they're trying to instill. But of course, in that moment of time, it's hard to sort of like separate when you're in that moment. Oh my God, look what's happening. I feel scared. I'm going, they're saying that I'm not good enough, or I can't, I will never be, I will never amount to anything if I ever leave. So it's important to realize that this is just fear that they're trying to instill on the victim, and it's up to that person to choose whether they're going to adopt and accept that reality. Otherwise, they don't have to. And it really takes a lot of courage to master the to master to master the higher self, to come about and say, you know what, it's okay that this is the way you're going to conduct yourself, but I'm not going to accept this. Even saying that, even saying that can be something that people are afraid to say. Oh, what's the worst that can happen? Nothing really. But they haven't taken that first step to actually do so. So that's why, they're in that fearful state, because number one, they're already being put in that fearful state by the narcissist, and then they're accepting that reality, and that they can't speak up for themselves. So by giving it a go and, just expressing yourself in that manner, you don't have to retaliate in that voice that they do, but by just being calm and say, you know what, I will not actually tolerate this anymore, and just walk away. Walk away and give it a go, and you see how you actually disempower them.
Here, I would like to ask you, Aaliyah, that after living with someone with these toxic traits of being controlled and manipulated, or abused, you often form a bond with the narcissist, which is often referred to as the trauma bond. How can somebody who has formed this bond, first of all, break it, even after they may have gone no contact, or if they're no longer in a relationship with this person? How can they start the healing process? And what should people be aware of? The aftermath of surviving a narcissistic abuse relationship. What should people be aware of? What's going to happen?
Right. So what people need to be aware of when it comes to the aftermath of, being in a toxic relationship, and the ways for healing is, they need to be aware of certain things. So, for example, what you mentioned is the trauma bonding, okay? The triggers, the grief work, which is, accepting the person for the reality, and that they will never, they never actually existed. The trauma recovery, healing mentally, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. These are some of the things that, one person needs to be aware of, in the aftermath of, moving forward to healing, to the healing stages.
Because, like you mentioned earlier on, when you're with this person, they try to instill fear in you, because they know what your weaknesses are. They know what states make you vulnerable, and they use it against you. So, for example, if you're not financially independent, they will use finances against you. That, you know what, if you leave me, you'll become homeless, you'll be on the streets, you'll be begging people for food. If you are scared of losing your children, they might even use that against you, that, you know what, I'll take the children away from you. I've even heard someone saying that when every time they thought of leaving this abusive person, they were threatened that they will be taken to court and they will kind of twist the story and make you look like the bad person, like you're the one who has lost it completely. And
Mm-hmm.
often people, and it's not just women, even men. I've seen
Yeah.
that sometimes even it's brothers who are on the receiving end, and they are scared because they have a reputation in the community, and they want to maintain that. But this partner, the wife or female colleague or what have you, they are using that against them, knowing that this person has a very reputable stance in the community. So I'm going to do something or say something out there that will make them look really bad and horrible. That will tarnish their image. And
Yeah.
often you see character assassination being done just to keep that person in your control.
Yeah.
So how can people deal with that? Because that's a big one.
Yeah. And it's hurtful when somebody goes through that, because obviously, what may be, a lot of it is not true,
Mm,
you know. But as you said, as you mentioned, this is a form of abuse, and this is a form of control and manipulation, to in attempt to hurt the victim. So as somebody who's thriving and surviving through this ordeal, one needs to really be self-assured and gain their self-confidence and not pay attention to what is being said.
mm.
And at the end of the day, you cannot control what happens or how people are going to react or who's going to believe that. But real situations like this expose who people really are in your life. So in a way, you got to take it as a blessing.
Mm.
Just take a look at take a look at the positives out of it rather than the negatives. Because again, for those people who actually believe the narcissist, without even actually understanding what the actual truth is, without having that, sort of bias belief, conforming to those bias beliefs, it just really goes to show what type of people those are who do believe. And then, and then you actually see those who are, at peace with you, no matter what is being said. They have, smart people, smart, intelligent people are not going to listen.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The only problem issue is that with somebody who is known to be openly as a
Mhm.
narcissist, somebody who's
Yeah.
obsessed with themselves, it's quite easy for people to understand. Okay, you know what? This person is like this, so this is why they behave like this, and they treat others like crap. But for somebody who is a covert narcissist and they
Yeah.
come across as one of the nicest people in the world, and then
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they do horrible things with their family member, a partner or a parent or a sibling or a relative or in-laws, it's very difficult, one, to expose their real face because nobody knows what they're really like because they are always wearing this mask, COVID or no COVID. And if you go out and say this person did this to me, or this person is like this, or this person is doing this to their loved ones or spouse or whatever, nobody's going to believe because they're like, no, that's not true. This person is actually really nice and sweet. Or this person is a humanitarian, or this person does so much for the
Charity.
community. How
Yeah.
dare you say that about this person? So instead of showing sympathy or empathy for the victim or the survivor, they start blaming the victim or the survivor that how dare you speak like that about this wonderful person. That makes it so difficult for people to leave or walk out or go no
Yeah.
contact.
Or even when people have left and they're just so at awe how people cannot see. But you really can't blame these people, because it really it's a narcissism has only been talked about in the most recent years, but
Yes.
it has existed for such a long time. Now with social media and more broadcastings about it on YouTube, prior to this, people didn't really know what it's, and even if as much as information is brought out there, unfortunately, it's not until someone actually has lived with a toxic person or a narcissistic person that they will really understand what it's
Oh,
like. And it's one of those things that, it's unfortunate, but it is. Someone has to have undergone through it, experienced it, witnesses for themselves to realize what these people are really like. But because, they put such charming persona, charismatic, very, they're very popular also in the community. They seem like they're, um, they put on a good act of service in front of people. It's hard to tell. And there are also spiritual leaders. I've spoken to partners of spiritual leaders who have gone through this phenomenon, abuse, but people don't see it. They cannot fathom this person being what this person describes, because they don't exhibit this out in the public. It's only, those people who are close to them and behind closed doors.
and like I'm glad you mentioned that this is kind of the topic of narcissism and understanding narcissism is fairly recent. Like if you go back 50 years even, there was hardly any mention. People used to talk about narcissistic personality disorder as a mental illness, but that's something totally, totally different, because I personally do not agree with that. Because
No.
I was saying this to one of my clients the other day, when my client was like, maybe it's an illness, like coronary heart disease or diabetes, so it can be treated with medications. And I I gave her an example. I said, how come if somebody is ill or unwell, say for example, God forbid, I have, I don't know, fever, yeah? Do I choose that when I'm in front of Aaliyah, I will not have my fever, but when I'm in front of my work colleague, I will have fever? You can't choose when you're going to be ill and when you're not going to be ill. It's not in your control.
Yeah.
When you're ill, you're ill. When you're unwell. But these people have full control over themselves, because if they choose to be nice, kind, friendly, approachable, helpful to the rest of the entire community, but at home, there's just one person that they're intimate with, close with, and they have the power and the choice to be mean to this person, hurtful, controlling, abusive, then no, that is not an illness. That is a choice.
Yeah, yeah.
And the day people realize that is the day there will be some kind of conscious awakening, which will actually make them decide for themselves what they truly deserve. And that is groundbreaking work to come to that realization, because that's when transformation happens. And I'm sure when people come to you, Aaliyah, they're hurting, they're in pain.
Yeah.
They don't want to live as merely survivors. They really want to thrive. And most of
Yeah.
the times we see there's some really successful people that they target. People
Yeah.
are really good at what they do. They are successful business people, entrepreneurs, or really good at academics, or earning a good income, and they're good at what they're doing, and they're happy people. But suddenly they come across somebody who's a narcissist, and this narcissist comes and destroys everything, their confidence, their self-esteem, their self-worth.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're like, how did that happen? And by the time you process it, sometimes it's too late. You've lost a major chunk of your life, or you've lost your business, or your confidence, or your friendships. So I would ask you here, Aaliyah, to share with our viewers who may be in this kind of position or circumstances. What can people do? If you could share with us some empowering ways to heal from narcissistic abuse.
Yeah. So, one of the things we've already mentioned about is, it's important, either by going no contact or limiting your communications and dealings with, toxic people or narcissists. Another one is setting boundaries. So by establishing the boundaries, we are telling, the narcissist that they cannot, that we will not tolerate their abusive behavior. So it's important to place, those boundaries. So when setting boundaries with a narcissist, one needs to be assertive and be prepared to follow through with your expectations. Because otherwise, if you're, telling them, look, I'm not willing to tolerate this, but then you're still, succumbing to their, their demands, they know their victims. They choose their victims because they know that they can, have such a strong hold. So that's why it's really important to, to be assertive when it comes to those, setting of those those boundaries. Number three, again, we acknowledged about, it's about acknowledging the what has happened to the victim. So for a lot of people, including myself, I mean, at first I was in denial, to come to the reality and the realization that I was with a narcissist. Now, by acknowledging what happened to you is one of the ways that you can start to start your healing journey and recovering from the trauma. So people often are shocked, clients, when they come to me, they're shocked at the reality, when they realize that the person that they were in a relationship with didn't really exist. So they're kind of baffled at the reality of who that was, who this is, and how do I move forward? Because I want to move forward, but I'm so trauma bonded by the experience and the facade, the fantasy that they played out for me. So, it's the attachment to that. So it's about also unlearning and detaching from the trauma bond in order to move forward and start the healing journey. Another one is to seek professional help. This is vital when healing from narcissistic abuse. So a therapist, a psychologist, or a coach who is an expert in narcissistic abuse, like, they have to be informed about this. Somebody who's trauma informed as well will be, useful and helpful. They can provide invaluable guidance, support, and tools to help you through the healing process. They can also help you develop healthy coping mechanisms. They can provide you with tools to support you with building a healthy and fulfilling life, so that you can be empowered. You can live an empowered life. Another thing that's really, really important is to join a support group. Mm-hmm. Now, that's one of the crucial, vital things that a survivor can connect with a support group. Because when you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, it can be easy to think that you're the one who's crazy, or you might find that you're often questioning your reality, doubting your own emotions or what happened to you, your experiences. So by seeking a support group, or finding someone to talk to who has experienced narcissistic abuse, you will often find how similar their abuse stories and their experience has been. And it can be validating to know that this type of abuse does happen, and that you are not alone. So that's really, that's just some of the things. Now, also, I'd like to, briefly touch on about practicing self-care, which is also another vital and crucial step that you can take to heal from narcissistic abuse. So this means taking time for activities that make you feel good, find new hobbies such as exercise, relaxation, meditation, spending time with supportive people. It's also important, like by eating healthy and getting plenty of rest. Now, these two are also just as important. So it's a whole combination of things to do. And, talk therapy alone just won't help you heal. By practicing self-care just won't help you heal alone. You need to do a variety of steps and practices for you, for one to heal and thrive.
True. True.
So, self forgiveness is one of the most important aspects of healing from narcissistic abuse. It's really essential for one to forgive themselves, as this will help them move on from trauma and live healthier lives. So, without self forgiveness, it's easy to become bogged down, be in self blame and self hatred, which can prevent the healing process. So, it's also important to forgive yourself, and accept that you're not perfect and that you've made, mistakes in choices in life. And however, these mistakes do not define oneself. So that will help you let go of the pain or the pain of the past and start fresh. Another one is also, you will never get closure from a narcissist. So what you can do for yourself is to learn about narcissistic personality disorder. When you learn about this disorder, this personality disorder, it can be helpful to understand what happened in the relationship and why the narcissist behaved the way that they did. It can also help to validate your experiences and give you a greater sense of clarity about what happened. So, it's important to understand that and accept that you will never get closure from them.
I'm glad you raised that point, because a lot of people, when they leave or suddenly leave or decide to not be in that relationship anymore, often it's not always like a pleasant experience. It's not like a planned goodbye, and it's something you do out of compulsion as a last resort. And also, in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
when the narcissist goes into the discard phase, where they have used you, abused
Yeah.
you, now they no longer need you or your supply, and they found somebody else to give them to them.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier on, that instead of a narcissist changing him or herself, they prefer changing their partners. That's much easier to do, So
Yeah.
when they do discard you, you're often kind of left thinking, what did I do to deserve this? Was it me? Did I not try hard enough? Do I lack something? All these questions that come up, and it's followed by self-blaming and self-pity and guilt, anger, mixed emotions. Very difficult to deal with. But like you said, you can't expect closure. Closure is when that person no longer needs you. That's closure. So
Yeah.
for a reason in their life, you sort of serve that reason. No, they don't need you anymore. They've moved on to another person.
Yeah.
And the cycle is going to continue. But for the victim
Yeah.
to break that cycle, and like you said, intergenerational trauma, to ensure that you don't pass on that baggage of negativity and hurt and resentment, and victim mode to the next generation, you have to do a lot of inner work, healing work, so that you do not pass that on to the next generation. But the next generation is somebody who's healed, happy, content,
Yeah.
and knows their self-worth, so it doesn't happen to them. So final words, Aaliyah,
Yeah.
before we yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, it's really important to, number one, I feel that the most important thing that has been taken away from us since, we were brought into this world is our relationship with ourselves. As soon as we're born into this world, we're already told who, what, when, how we're going to be as humans in this world, determined by our parents and their expectation. So it's important to recognize that and realize that at some stage of your life, and actually when you do, to build a relationship, a strong relationship with yourself, so as to not have that, to fall victim, to toxic people and narcissistic people, because otherwise, you know, being controlled and being, subtly abused and you're not aware of it, it can be very detrimental to your mental health and your self-worth. And what's the worst case scenario, as I was saying, is that when you're already brought into this world, being told to who, be, how, you're removed from your true self, your authentic self. And so when you've gone through the abuse, because you didn't have that sense of self, the strength, the empowerment that naturally is already embedded within you, the capability to go through, life, not being so attached and being more curious. It's already been taken away from you since, such an early age. This is why, I always speak to women. It's important to build a relationship with yourself, because to know who you are is also to know who other people are. And when you love yourself, you can really recognize what love is, because if it doesn't feel, right to you, the love that others are giving to you, then that's, a trigger. So this is why it's so important. That's a red flag, of, unhealthy relationship or an unhealthy person. So when you love yourself, you know what that feels like. You don't depend and rely on it. And you're okay if people don't love you either, because you love yourself, you accept yourself. So, the bottom line is it's important, to build your relationship and strong connection with God.
And as they say, that one who knows himself or herself can truly get to know their creator. So knowing oneself, being conscious
Yes.
about oneself, then you will become God conscious. But
Yeah.
if you're not aware of your own existence, of your own being, your own flaws and shortcomings, strengths and weaknesses, then you can never learn things about other people or your true purpose in life that Allah created you for. Jazakumullah khairan, Aaliyah. That
Exactly.
was a really insightful discussion, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm sure our viewers did too. Inshallah,
Yes, likewise, and thank you.
inshallah, I'll hope to have you again in the near future. To all our lovely viewers, if you have any questions or comments or feedback to share, or if you would like to connect with Aaliyah, please feel free to call in our studio and leave your contact details, and we'll be more than happy to connect you with our transformational empowerment expert. Meanwhile, look after yourselves, heal yourselves from anything that's hurting, and inshallah, we'll see you again next Saturday with another topic around your mental health. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.